Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to make a Christmas card. So here's a look at all the supplies that I used on the card today. So if you have any questions, you can come back here and reference this list. So I'm going to be using the Born as the King stamp set from Joy Clair Stamps. This is from the Color by Face series. It's got all these great large scripty sentiments in there, so you can use any one of these. I'm just going to be using the Glory to the Highest, but any of these sentiments would work on the card today. I have also used this sentiment set on a pop-up card. I will leave that video linked in the top right hand corner if you want to go check it out. So the first thing I want to do is create my panel for my sentiment. Now I wanted a border, die cut border on the bottom of this, but I wanted a mat for it as well. In order to get these exactly the same so they'll fit together, I'm going to go ahead and do some double die cutting here. So I've got a piece of white cardstock and craft cardstock. Both are cut to the same size, but when I die cut this, I'm actually going to move my craft paper up a little bit. And then that's going to allow that craft paper to be die cut a little bit longer than the white piece of cardstock that I'm die cutting, and it's going to create the perfect mat. So there's a closer look at that. And then whenever I go and fill this in with my sentiment later, I can go ahead and chop off both tops of these at the same size, and it will continue to stay the perfect size for a mat for that white piece of cardstock. So for my sentiment, I'm going to go ahead and do a little building here. I'm going to first stamp these little kind of leaf ferns, whatever you want to call them, right along the bottom border that I die cut. Now, if you don't have a die cut border like this, you can use a scallop, you can use a straight edge, you could also use a very large circle die, and that's going to give you the same kind of edge I've got going on here. You're just not going to have those two sides. So I want to go ahead and stamp this in some green dye ink. I'm going to do double stamping to darken that up. So I'm using my Misty. Then I'm going to clean off my stamps. I will be embossing my sentiment in just a moment. So in order to get that same embossed look with my dye ink that I stamped, I'm going to go ahead and stamp over this with some Versamark ink. So I'll prep my surface with my embossing bag, ink up my stamps with my Versamark ink pad, stamp straight over that, and then I will go ahead and put some clear embossing powder right on top of that Versamark ink. Now this is going to give the appearance that I have heat embossed with this green ink, but I've done it with dye ink, so I don't have to have a bunch of different colors of pigment inks or embossing powder on hand. So the next thing I want to do is go ahead and stamp my sentiment. Now, like I said, I'm going to be using the Glory to the Highest sentiment in that Born as the King stamp set, but you can use any of the sentiments. It would fit perfectly in this card. So I picked that up with the lid of my Misty, and I am using my Misty because I'm going to go ahead and double heat emboss this just to give it a little bit more of a bolder look. So I prepped my surface with my embossing bag, inked up my stamp with Versamark ink, and I am going to go ahead and double stamp this just because this is the first time I've used this particular stamp in the set. Then I will sprinkle on a little Gold Twinkle embossing powder. This is from Wow. And I'll go ahead and brush off any little areas where I might have gotten powder exactly where I don't want it. I just do that with an old paintbrush. It takes it right off, and then I went ahead and heat set that. Now once it was heat set, I put it right back in my Misty, and this lines up perfectly, so I can go ahead and stamp right over the top of that heat embossing I've already done and add another layer of the Gold Twinkle embossing powder, and it will just give you a nice bold look. Now I went ahead and heat embossed off camera, or went in with my heat tool off camera, but once that was finished, I had quite a bit of white space still left on the top of that panel that I had die cut previously. So I lined up the white panel and the craft panel, and I'll cut straight across. Now that's going to ensure I still have that perfect craft mat behind my white sentiment panel. Now to dress this up just a little bit, I decided to pull out some of those solid little leaf stamps from the Born as the King stamp set, and I'm going to create my own background on my card base. So I've got an A2 top folding white card base here. I made this myself. I just cut my cardstock down to 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and then I just score it 5 1/2 inches and fold my card in half. It's very simple and easy to do. And then I went ahead and I'm gonna pull out all of those different leaf stamps. I've got them loaded onto acrylic blocks, and I've got some of that same green dye ink I used beforehand. I just repeatedly stamp that background right onto the background, and I'll finish it off in just a moment. But I want to go ahead and stamp one of those little birds. The one that I already stamped was a little bit too thick of lines. I moved my paper just a little bit in my MISTI. So I went ahead and I'll stamp another one just to make sure I've got the perfect image. Because this is a simple card, I don't want that many mistakes on it. So that's why I went ahead and double stamped this. Now back to the background, I wanted to add a few little holly berries to those leaves. So I pulled out my alcohol marker, my red one, and with the brush tip, I am just going in and adding little dots. Just straight up and down little pokes of my marker will make different size dots, and that's going to finish off the holly berries. So for the sentiment, I'll go ahead and load on that white cardstock panel right onto the craft panel with some just double-sided adhesive. And I have already fussy cut out my little dove that I stamped beforehand, and I did add just a smidge of hickory smoke distress ink right along kind of the belly of the bird. That just gave it a little bit more depth. I did that after I fussy cut, and I also ran a black marker around the cut edges for a nice finished look. But once I had that loaded onto the panel, I popped up the craft panel onto the card base. You can see I didn't stamp the center of the card base with any stamps because I knew it would be covered, so I didn't bother. And I went ahead and loaded that sentiment panel with some double-sided adhesive and fun foam for a nice dimensional effect. Then I'll go ahead and place my little bird right on the left-hand side of my sentiment, and I'm going to do that with some dimensional adhesive as well. Now to finish off those holly berries, I added a few drops of Nouveau Crystal Drops. This is in the red color. I'm not sure of the exact name of it, but it should be in the supply list. Now these Nouveau Crystal Drops are not completely opaque. That's why I went ahead and put the red color underneath them. However, you could skip that step or you could skip this step. Just remember that these aren't going to be completely solid color. It's going to be a little bit see-through. So once that was completely finished, this didn't take too long at all. This card was completely done. Here's a closer look at that finished card and just how much more oomph you get with that sentiment just by doing that double heat embossing. Now also I did heat emboss those green leaves, which made the whole card kind of come together, and then adding that little bit of Nouveau drops to kind of bring dimension to the background also helped pull the entire card together. Now on the left side of your screen, you're going to see a few different links you could click on. Don't forget to subscribe today, and thank you so much for watching.